An Anti-Hero, Winston Smith from 1984. In this presentation, I will be discussing why I believe Winston Smith from George Orwell's renowned novel, 1984, is an anti-hero through character analysis. Before we get into why I believe Winston Smith is an anti-hero, let's dive into what exactly the character trope, anti-hero, means. First of all, look at the word itself. It has the prefix anti, which means opposite of, and then the word hero, which is most likely a character trope that we are all familiar with. What words do you think of when describing a conventional hero? You may think of the words unflawed or perfect. You may also think of the word positive, since heroes usually give an audience an overall positive impression. Maybe you think of someone who is always helping those in dangerous situations and saving the day, aka someone who has good morals. Or maybe someone who is substantially strong, either mentally or physically. An anti-hero will not have most of these qualities. They will be opposite from an ideal hero in that sense. Although they won't have the greatest first impression, the audience will almost always sympathize with the central character, whether it is because of a tragic backstory supplied by the author or because of the society or environment the character lives in. My favorite way to describe an anti-hero is through one of these personality alignment charts. Generally, this character trope will fall into chaotic good because a character may break the rules in their government or society, but in the end it is for a good cause. To clarify, an anti-hero is not an antagonist because they are not opposed to the main character. They just act the opposite. An anti-hero is a central character or the protagonist. 1984 is a dystopian novel set in Oceania, one of the superpower states in the book. The nation is controlled by an oppressive totalitarian regime, aka Big Brother, the ruler, and the party, the manipulative regime. Winston Smith is the protagonist who eventually sees through the schemes of the government and battles with the oppressive conditions he must live with in the novel. Julia is another main character that I will be mentioning a lot in these slides. She's Winston's lover. Or maybe you would prefer to call her Winston's Juliet, just to relate it to the Romeo and Juliet unit. At first, she seems to be a passionate conformist in the regime. There are themes of oppression throughout the whole novel, such as no individuality, no free thought, government surveillance, and lastly, rewriting history. In relation to this, here is my favorite quote from the novel, which is both interesting and slightly disturbing. He who controls the past controls the future. He who controls the present controls the past. Now let's get into Winston's character traits. Winston's moral code. In Book 2, Chapter 1, Winston plots to kill and rape Julia. Text evidence. Only 5 nights ago he had contemplated smashing her skull in with a cobblestone, but that was of no importance. He had imagined her naked, youthful body as he had seen it in his dream. Page 111. Winston is willing to kill anyone that may leak his unorthodox behavior to the party. He even stated that his plans of murdering Julia have little to no significance. In addition, he quickly forgets about his devious plans and fantasizes about Julia. This suggests that individuals are willing to harm others in order to save their own lives. Relation to the trope. In the beginning of the novel, Winston does not have the best moral code. Therefore, he has one of the attributes related to an anti-hero. The next trait. Relatable and weak character. In Book 1, Chapter 1, Orwell describes Winston's struggles climbing a flight of stairs. Text evidence. The flat was 7 flights up, and Winston, who was 39, had a varicose ulcer above his right ankle. Went slowly, resting several times on the way. This suggests that Winston is not in the best physical shape, being unable to go up the stairs without several breaks. In addition, Winston also has a varicose ulcer, which is very unappealing to imagine. In comparison to how Big Brother is described on the poster, the face of a man about 45, with a heavy black mustache and ruggedly handsome features. Page 1. Winston already seems mediocre, and this is just the beginning of the novel. Relation to the trope. All in all, Winston is a character that may induce pity from the audience, which is one of the traits linked with an anti-hero. His weakness and averageness is something audiences can relate to. His negative first impressions. In Book 1, Chapter 1, Orwell describes Winston's physical traits using complex language. Text evidence. He moved over to the window, a smallish, frail figure. The meagerness of his body merely emphasized by the blue overalls which were the uniform of the party. His hair was very fair, his face naturally sanguine, his skin roughened by coarse soap. Page 2. Overall, the author is actively using words that indicate that Winston is average. He is not given miraculous superpowers, dashing good looks, or any attributes a hero may have. This suggests that Winston is not a person who naturally attracts people in any way, which certainly does not bring about a good first impression. Relation to the trope. Generally, an anti-hero does not have a very good first impression, just like Winston. Finally, his last trait, his nonconformist/rule-breaker behavior. In Book 1, Chapter 1, we see Winston making his first small act of rebellion against the regime. Text evidence. All he had to do was to transfer to paper the interminable, restless monologue that had been running inside his head, literally, for years. At this moment, however, the monologue had dried up. Moreover, his varicose ulcer had begun itching unbearably. Page 8. Although the novel explicitly says that there are no laws in the nation, punishments are still distributed to those who do not follow the social norm. Winston is willing to risk his life by writing his thoughts inside a diary. He goes against the party. This suggests that when an authoritarian government forces conformity on a society, individuals are more likely to accept their differences rather than to conform to societal standards. Relation to the trope. Winston believes that he is above the immoral actions of the government and acts against them for a good cause. To conclude, Winston Smith is a character who did not have the best morals, was relatable and average, did not have the best first impressions, rebelled against an oppressive government because he believed that they were wrong. His character matches up with multiple character traits that define an anti-hero, therefore he is an anti-hero. An anti-hero and other well-known character tropes are reused over and over because they allow an author to convey a complex idea in a character in a more understandable way. An anti-hero is a special trope because as humans, we will not always be perfect, strong, and make the right decisions. However, even though our imperfectness is inevitable, like an anti-hero, we can still impact the world around us in a positive way.